So my brother-in-law is coming and he's going to share his story with us. And I'm excited about that. Bryan.
Hello.
How are you?
How do you do?
Come on in.
You guys live in the Netherlands.
Live out on the... How's it going, bro?
Pretty good.
Love you, man. Bro, look at those shoes, man.
Bro, they were $50.
What kind of shoes are those?
They're Nike, I don't know.
It's kind of hard to see because it matches the carpet.
The Nike, the running shoes, obviously. But
This dude, look. His daughter
oh yeah, hold on.
fell asleep. Well,
No, I
okay.
fell asleep.
So Bryan fell asleep, right?
And my 8-year-old and my 2-year-old decided that it'd be cute to grab nail polish. Excuse the crustiness. I wear
Bro, you got
steel-toe boots.
you got some pretty little toenails.
I keep forgetting every day to take them off. So there's been occasions I've gone to Walgreens and the gas station in sandals, and people are like, "What's wrong with this guy?"
Yeah. Sweet.
I want to take this time to promote Heaven on Earth, Pastor Alfred and the lady. They are the best pastors that I've had so far.
So if you guys are in where?
Heaven on Earth.
Heaven on Earth. Where's it located?
It's on Kissimmee, Florida, off of Hoagland.
All right, I'll put the link in the description below. You know who you remind me of? What's that rapper? What's his name?
DJ Khaled. Please like and subscribe, because if not, I'll be knocking on your door, and I'll be doing it myself.
I was gonna say we've been married for.
Oh.
No. I've been married to his sister for a while, but this is my brother-in-law, and we're just gonna talk about just random things that the Lord has laid on our heart, and then let's see what happens when we go from there. So, Bryan, one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was some of your testimony and how I've seen you even encounter God for yourself, and I've seen a shift and a change in you. Go ahead and just tell us your story and whatever you want to share.
The first one that comes to mind, which is the very first experience that I encountered with you, and one of the most personal and real experiences that I've had was, I want to say, about roughly 7.5 years ago, because my daughter was a couple months old.
Wow, that long?
Yeah, and I mean, there's been several after, but I remember that my wife went out of town for 2 weeks. My in-laws, that whole year, they were out of the state. And those 2 weeks that I was going to be alone, it was in a time frame where I was really departed from God. And there was a lot of things that I was accustomed to that, fleshly desires like, smoking and hanging out with a specific type of person that, fed that desire. And I remember it was random that you decided to call me and swing by, and you told me that God put in your heart to be able to spend some time with me. And during that time, even though I was doing all this stuff, I still had a deep desire to experience God on a different level. But because I had that back and forth battle of wanting to, but still having the things that I like to do on the side, and not having also the person that can constantly kind of feed that desire of wanting to seek God, have that type of positive influence, I never got to it. So when you came by, it started becoming more understanding to me that it was something that God was setting up. And during that first week that you were sharing with me just random experiences that you had, that desire started to build, along with moments that we would take in worship Bible studies, mostly a lot of the testimonies with your encounters. It made me grow this desire that it started making me feel uncomfortable, and I found myself really like asking God why I haven't been able to experience Him in a way that can literally change the way that I would think, the way that I would speak, the way that I would go about my day, and people seeing that difference, that change. And one of the biggest desires I had was, hey, I would tell God, if you can change people like Chris, and he can have those type of experiences with you, where he's like literally transformed from one person to another, and he's in my image, you become pretty much where he wants you, the person that he wants you to be. But why is it that I've asked and I haven't received it? And I started understanding that it came with the desire, it came with that want, and one of the things that came to my mind a lot was the phrase that I will always hear as a kid growing up, that God is a gentleman, Jesus is a gentleman. He'll knock on the door and he'll wait for you to answer. And that opened up my eyes to understanding that if I have that desire, I have to open up the door and allow him to come in so that I can really experience him in that level. Mm-hmm. So as you know, when it got to a point where I think it was after 3 days, the first 3 days of this, we were sitting on a couch just like this, but you were across from me, and at that point, after I don't know, probably like 20 experiences later that you talked to me about, as you were talking, I just randomly got up, and I started walking towards the kitchen. And I'm sure you can remember,
Mm-hmm.
I turned the corner and you just kept talking. And
I was playing guitar.
Yeah,
strumming away.
You were playing guitar, and I guess it was the music that kind of shifted me away.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I didn't know why I got up to walk, towards that direction. But I remember turning the corner and automatically feeling this odd but familiar feeling in my belly.
Mm.
And I remember I always compare, when I tell people about it, I always compare it to those that know about Dragon Ball Z. When Goku is formulating his little power ball, and it goes from tiny to something massive. It literally, that's how it started.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I had no control over, any body movement. I was just stuck in that one spot. My lips were sealed shut. I couldn't speak. The only thing I pretty much was able to do was move my eyes around to try to figure out, what was going on. And I kept hearing you talk, which I'm like, man, is this guy gonna realize that something's wrong? And when is he gonna get up and turn that corner?
Because I didn't see you.
No,
you were in the kitchen.
And I had actually, the way the house was formatted, I passed the kitchen and there was a little opening,
Mm-hmm.
and it was as soon as I turned that corner that it went down. So I'm over here like, Chris, like, come over here.
Yeah.
But as this is happening, that it was an a burning, electrifying feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but not in a painful manner. It was so like, how can I explain it? Like soothing yet energizing. I mean, those that have experienced the glory of God, they understand where I'm going at with this. So what really blew my mind was, as this is happening, I literally feel like a hand pulling my back down, and as my back, as I'm being like practically pushed forward into like a submissive posture, I feel my hands being stretched out, and I'm slowly falling to my knees. And it got to the point where once my knees hit the floor and my arms were literally like stretched out wide, and again I have no control over what's going on. This is literally like just against, I guess, my will. I realized that I kept being pushed down all the way to the point where my forehead was on the floor. I'm kneeling down, hands out, and this ball of energy starts to creep its way up my stomach, up towards my chest, and I would say it was around my chest, going to my throat area, where I realized, okay, this is the Holy Spirit. Because if for those that have experienced it for the first time, they can relate to where you kind of get scared because you're like, what's going on? But you kind of know what's going on, so you try to fight it a little bit, but then you understand that you shouldn't. And I was in between that battle, and so I'm like, you know what? I this is something I've been desiring. So, it's creeping up, and then obviously, after like what felt like an hour, you decide to get up and turn the corner. And when you see me, I'm kind of trying to look at you. I'm like, bro, it's about time.
Yeah.
And you just start speaking in tongues, and at that moment that you started speaking in tongues is when that thing, it's like you shot it with some adrenaline, and it just shot right out. When it shot out, the only thing that came out was this. The only thing I could describe it as, as time went on and I learned more about it, was this heavenly tongue that wasn't something that you try to, like when you're in service and the pastor's like, those that are, God has blessed you with, the gift of tongues, just start speaking in your heavenly, language, and you just start speaking. And this was, and you kind of know the pattern of, when you get into the spirit, the type of pattern that the Lord has guided you towards speaking. This was totally different. And as that's happening, the only thing I can describe with this whole tornado of awesomeness, I guess, was it was cleansing me. And I understood this afterwards. I had so much anger. I had so much regrets with decisions I made. There was a lot of things that I was holding on to that I just recently, I want to say last year in the revive retreat that we had in our church, God was able to deliver me from frustrations with finances, frustrations with marriage. I was fresh into a marriage, and the way that we entered it was in a very difficult manner. So my escape was smoking weed and drinking, and finding an escape route that didn't have to do with church, because at that time I felt like church failed me. So all this stuff that I was just holding in, and it was just building this wall, I felt like it was being demolished, and it was literally like cleansing me. And what blew my mind was that as I'm speaking these tongues and I'm weeping and there's snot all over the place and tears, and I literally feel how this one thing that started formulating in my belly, as it's coming out, I always describe it as a long, like when those magicians are pulling out the cloth, the colorful cloth. Obviously you have a starting point and an end point, and I felt how as it's coming out and it's cleansing me, the very end of that ball of energy, as it's coming up, everything felt, it's like I felt heartburn, I felt all this nastiness, but yet everything behind that was nothing but, it felt like clean peace. And that's when God revealed to me, as that's happening, like, I'm cleansing you. You've desired, you've been telling me you're desiring, and I'm setting this time apart for that. And it was at that moment when it finally all came out. And I say finally in the sense of like that all that nastiness came out, but at the same time it was a feeling that I didn't want it to finish, because it was something that literally takes you to another place. And it was at that moment when that came out that I was able to have that gasp of air, like somebody that's drowning, and that finally gets to, gets pulled out of the water and they're able to breathe. I just, I felt free. And in that moment that, we took that time to reflect on it, and I'm looking at you like, what just happened? That's what I heard God say, that's just a glimpse of the glory and of the presence of this desire that you've been wanting. That's just a glimpse of it. And that led me to taking that weekend, which I think was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, to do a fast of just water, and literally close myself in that house. No contact with the outside world. I mean, I let the family know that I didn't want to be contacted. It was literally like, curtains closed, everything ISO, And I remember you told me about the video of Benny Hinn, that he had the teaching on entering his presence. And the more I watched that video and I followed those steps, understanding that the first 3 days was practically, that stage one that he talks about, where you're praising, you're praying, you're fighting your flesh, and it's a lot of it is time. It's the longer you stay in it, the more you'll see how God literally transitions you from this state of spiritual warfare to a state where like the enemy has no control, that like where you're practically unreachable. Obviously leading to like the tabernacle, where he described it as the place of sacrifice, the holy place, if I'm not mistaken, and then the holies of holies. So with that format that I'm learning, I found myself in those 3 days going from a basic prayer to like a heavenly prayer, where now it's not just thank you Lord for this and Lord bless this person, but like a soul type prayer,
communion,
and
connection.
I mean, the words changed, the atmosphere changed. I was able to experience boldness. Yeah, like how if as a kid, when you walk in the dark, you're scared. You're like, because the first thing you think about is monsters. Or whatever. And then when you like overcome that, you feel like this, nothing scares me. So as this is happening, God's revealing to me, you're in a spiritual warfare. So I was able to experience going from one phase to another, where as my prayer changed, and I'm digging deeper, I'm also understanding that I'm doing something that the enemy doesn't want me to do. Along with my understanding on, the purpose that God has in my life, and how dangerous we can become the closer we become to God, how much more dangerous to the enemy we can become. Able to get to the point where I isolated myself in one specific room. And at that moment when I did that, and I mean, it must have taken like about an hour, I would say. But at that moment that I did that, I threw a curtain over the window. I didn't want no light coming in. I just wanted to be in darkness. And I wanted to literally examine myself. And at that time I was telling God, take me to a different level. What more is there? And as I'm sitting on the bed, I literally entered this mode again, which was a familiar feeling of not having control over my body and my lips being sealed. And at that moment that happened, I remember what happened 2 days ago, because at this time, this was day 2 of it, of the fasting. And in my head, I'm like, oh, it's about to go down. So I'm sitting there. I can't speak. And I remember the one thing that you had told me, and that Benny Hinn had mentioned, that silence attracts God. And I literally went from not being able to pray anymore to just being quiet. And I understood in that moment that God wanted to speak to me. And what blew my mind till this day, and I have yet to experience it again, but what blew my mind, and it marked me in a way where it's a reminder to me of what I need to do whenever I go through the situations I go through in life. What I need to do to be able to find my way back to Christ, and find that my way back to that type of intimacy that as believers we should each have and practice on a daily basis, was being able to sit there in silence and witness and experience the aroma of the room change. It went from a basic like cinnamon smell that my wife likes to put a lot in the room, the cinnamon candles, and it went from that straight to like this sweet honey, oily fragrance that was, I've never smelled anything like it. I mean, I honestly, like, I'm big on colognes, I'm big on fragrance, and that smell, I've never smelled anything like it. And as the thing about it is the way that it hit, it was literally like a shift. And as that happened, the only thing I was able to speak at that moment, that he actually gave me a chance to open my lips, was welcome Holy Spirit, and as I said that, I literally fell in this high where I felt like I couldn't even feel my feet.
Yeah.
My feet felt like, if I could describe it as far as like a image, it's like my body, my legs turned into a little cloud. Yeah. I was walking and it felt like I was floating. I would lay down and I would just giggle, and it was this type of spiritual high, man, that, I mean, I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah.
It was something.
It's the ecstasy of heaven.
It was something that, I mean, I woke up in the morning and I felt like I'm about to walk out of this door to go to church, and I feel bad for any demon I see my way or anybody because you get this boldness, you get this oh man, how do you explain it? You just get this like power in you that makes you feel like no mountain's too high to climb. I mean, it's like looking at the toughest, biggest guy and saying, dude, I feel bad for you if I get through you, because it's this type, it's hard to explain, but at the same time it's not. And I know, for a lot of those that are watching that have encountered, the Spirit of God in that way.
My brother-in-law, Bryan, he forgot to mention in this testimony, like what the Lord did afterwards. So check this out.
What I forgot to mention was one of the things that my wife and my in-laws were able to experience once they came back, because I have mentioned that my wife was out for 2 weeks and my in-laws were out for most of the year. They actually came back 3 days, I want to say like 3 days after she came back from New Jersey. And the first thing she did when she came in was look at me and kind of stare at me for a little bit, because she realized there was something different. And she said she was able to like visually see like a change in my appearance, a glow, and the atmosphere in the house was like walking into an Avatar scene where everything's just amazing. And I want to say like 3 days later, my in-laws came, and they're people of prayer, and my mother-in-law came in, and the first thing she did when she came in was put her purse down and kind of look around and kind of sense the same thing, and told us, man, it feels a little different in the house, or something good. And then she saw me and she automatically noticed there was a difference. And so when I explained the experience that happened, they were like blown away as to like, wow, what God can do, in a house, the atmosphere of a place, and just, in a person, especially because they knew a lot of the challenges I was having. So it's something that, to this day I can honestly say, if you experience, people will notice. It's not something that, the things of God it's not done in vain. God doesn't leave you in vain. So it's like He will literally allow people to see a change so that they can see the difference between, a spiritually dead person and somebody that's, fruitful in Him. So
Awesome.